Dr. Samuel Hayes had spent 7 years studying dead civilizations, which made him an expert on the silence that ancient places carried. The whispering caverns on Kepler 442b had that particular quality of silence that archaeologists learned to recognize, not empty silence, but waiting silence, as if the darkness itself was holding its breath. Note for expedition log, he spoke into his recorder while adjusting his portable lighting array. Day 3 of cave exploration. Atmospheric readings continue showing anomalous oxygen levels that suggest either ongoing biological processes or technological environmental management. Neither possibility should exist in a supposedly uninhabited cave system. The orbital surveys had been tantalizing but inconclusive, geometric formations that appeared too regular for natural cave development, thermal signatures that suggested internal heat sources, and electromagnetic readings that defied explanation. The Academic Review Board had classified the expedition as preliminary investigation with moderate risk factors, which was university bureaucrat language for interesting enough to fund, dangerous enough to require insurance waivers. Samuel descended deeper into the cave network, following passages that showed increasingly obvious signs of artificial modification. The walls were too smooth, the angles too precise, and the air circulation too consistent for natural formation. His archaeological training had taught him to recognize the difference between geology and engineering, and these caves were definitely engineered. The precision of these passages suggests advanced construction techniques, he continued recording. Tool marks are visible but don't match any known drilling or carving methods. The material appears to be natural stone that's been somehow restructured at the molecular level to achieve these smooth surfaces. His footsteps echoed strangely in the darkness ahead, creating acoustic patterns that suggested large open spaces beyond his light's reach. The cave system was larger than initial surveys had indicated, extending deep into the planet's crust with chambers and passages that followed logical architectural principles rather than random geological processes. Samuel's portable scanner began registering energy readings that made him pause his descent. Anomalous energy signatures detected approximately 50 meters ahead. Patterns suggest regular fluctuation rather than random natural phenomena. Investigating further. The passage opened into a vast chamber that made his lighting array seem pathetically inadequate. Stalactites and stalagmites had been carved into elegant columns that supported a ceiling lost in shadows above. The floor was covered with intricate patterns that appeared to be some form of decorative stonework, but closer examination revealed they were actually functional. Channels and conduits that suggested sophisticated engineering hidden beneath aesthetic beauty. "This is definitely artificial construction," Samuel whispered, his voice carrying strange harmonics in the cathedral-like space. The architectural sophistication suggests a civilization with advanced understanding of both engineering and artistic design. Dating will require more detailed analysis, but preliminary assessment suggests construction techniques beyond current human capabilities. His equipment began malfunctioning as he moved deeper into the chamber. The portable lighting flickered intermittently, his scanner produced readings that fluctuated wildly, and his communication equipment generated static that almost sounded like voices speaking in unknown languages. Technical difficulties increasing with proximity to the chamber's center, he recorded, fighting the urge to retreat to areas where his equipment functioned properly. Electromagnetic interference suggests active technology rather than residual energy signatures from ancient construction. Samuel approached what appeared to be the chamber's focal point, a raised platform surrounded by geometric patterns carved into the floor with mathematical precision. The platform itself was empty, but the air around it seemed to shimmer with energy that made his instruments go haywire. Platform appears to be some form of ceremonial or functional focal point. Energy readings are off the charts, but the source isn't visible. It's almost like the stone itself is generating. His portable lighting died completely, plunging him into absolute darkness. Samuel stood perfectly still, waiting for his eyes to adjust while fighting the primal fear that accompanied sudden blindness in unknown territory. His archaeological training included protocols for equipment failure in dangerous environments, but those protocols assumed natural caves without mysterious energy sources that could disable technology. Backup lighting systems non-responsive, he whispered into his recorder, hoping it was still functioning. Emergency protocols indicate immediate retreat to areas with functional equipment, but current position prevents safe navigation without visual reference. He began feeling carefully for his emergency chemical light sticks, the old-fashioned technology that was supposed to work regardless of electromagnetic interference. As he fumbled in his equipment pack, he became aware that the darkness around him wasn't quite as complete as he'd initially thought. There was something that might have been reflected light coming from somewhere deeper in the chamber, too faint to illuminate anything but strong enough to suggest he wasn't completely alone in the darkness. Possible light source detected in the chamber's depths, he recorded. Investigating while maintaining current position for safety. Samuel activated a chemical light stick, and the green phosphorescent glow revealed that the chamber was even larger than he'd initially estimated. The columns extended upward into shadows that his light couldn't penetrate, and additional passages led off in directions that hadn't been visible with his electric lighting. More importantly, the faint light he'd noticed was definitely real, a soft, silvery illumination that seemed to emanate from somewhere beyond his current visual range. Confirmed light source of unknown origin approximately 100 meters ahead, he continued. Spectral characteristics don't match any known natural phenomena. Beginning cautious approach. Samuel moved carefully across the decorated floor, using his chemical light to avoid obstacles while trying to identify the source of the mysterious illumination. The patterns carved into the stone seemed to grow more intricate as he approached the light source, creating geometric designs that were beautiful and somehow familiar, as if they followed mathematical principles that human minds were naturally equipped to appreciate. The light was coming from another passage that led deeper into the cave system, emanating with the steady consistency of technological lighting rather than the flickering patterns of natural phenomena like phosphorescent minerals or biological luminescence. Light source appears artificial in nature, Samuel recorded. Consistency and spectrum suggest advanced technology rather than natural cave phenomena. This confirms suspicions about the true nature of this site. As he approached the illuminated passage, Samuel became aware of something else, a sound so faint it was almost subliminal, like breathing or the whisper of air movement through carefully designed acoustic channels. He paused at the entrance to the lit passage, his archaeological instincts warring with basic human caution. Professional curiosity demanded investigation of what was clearly a significant archaeological discovery, but survival instinct suggested that mysterious lights in supposedly abandoned caves might indicate dangers that weren't covered in his safety protocols. Beginning exploration of illuminated section, he decided, speaking to his recorder with more confidence than he actually felt. Safety protocols remain in effect, but scientific significance of this discovery justifies careful investigation. Samuel stepped into the passage, and immediately noticed that his electronic equipment began functioning again. His scanner activated with soft chimes, his communication gear stopped generating static, and even his primary lighting array flickered back to life. Electronic equipment restored to full functionality upon entering illuminated section, he recorded with growing excitement. This suggests controlled technological environment rather than random electromagnetic interference. The passage led to another chamber, smaller than the first but far more obviously artificial. The walls were covered with what appeared to be control panels or decorative elements made from materials that weren't quite metal and weren't quite stone. The lighting came from sources embedded in the ceiling that provided illumination without visible mechanisms, creating an environment that was both alien and somehow comfortable. Samuel was examining what might have been a control interface when he heard it, the sound that would change everything about his understanding of this discovery. Breathing. Definitely breathing, slow and steady, coming from somewhere deeper in the chamber. He wasn't alone. Samuel's hand moved instinctively to the emergency beacon on his equipment belt while his mind raced through possibilities. The breathing was too regular for an injured person, too controlled for someone hiding in fear, and too deliberate for unconsciousness. Someone was in the chamber with him, and they were aware of his presence. "Hello," he called softly, his voice carrying strange echoes in the artificially lit space. "I'm Dr. Samuel Hayes, an archaeologist with the Kepler Research Initiative. If you need assistance." The breathing stopped. Samuel stood perfectly still, straining to hear any movement or response while fighting the urge to retreat toward the passage he'd entered through. His archaeological training included protocols for encountering other researchers or lost expedition members, but this situation felt different. The breathing had been too patient, too controlled for someone who was simply lost or injured. "Don't be scared," came a voice from the shadows beyond his light's reach. Female, soft, with an accent he couldn't identify. "I've been waiting." The words should have been comforting, but something about their delivery made Samuel's skin crawl with primitive warnings that predated rational thought. The voice carried qualities that suggested the speaker was accustomed to being listened to, with undertones that implied knowledge beyond the immediate situation. "Waiting for what?" Samuel asked, keeping his voice level while his hand remained near his emergency beacon. "For someone like you." The voice came closer, accompanied by the soft sound of footsteps on stone. "Someone who treats old places with respect, who sees beauty in what others built rather than just value in what can be taken." Samuel's portable lighting flickered as the speaker moved, creating shifting shadows that made it impossible to determine exactly where the voice was coming from. "Are you a researcher? Part of another expedition team?" Laughter, musical and genuinely amused. "I suppose you could call me a researcher. Though my field work has been rather extensive." A figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of Samuel's lighting range, and he found himself staring at someone who was definitely human but somehow not quite right. She was tall and graceful, with dark hair that seemed to catch light that wasn't there and skin that appeared to have a faint luminescence of its own. But it was her eyes that made Samuel realize this encounter was far more significant than finding another archaeologist in an abandoned cave. Silver eyes. Not gray, not pale blue, but actually silver, like polished metal that reflected light with perfect clarity. "You're not human," Samuel said, the words escaping before his scientific training could impose more diplomatic phrasing. "Close enough," she replied, stepping fully into his light. "My name is Lyra. And you're right, I'm not exactly human, though our species are more closely related than you might expect." Samuel studied her appearance with archaeological precision, cataloging details that confirmed his assessment. Her proportions were human but refined, as if someone had taken human architecture and improved it through careful engineering. Her ears swept upward in elegant points that would have been distinctive on any human, and her movements carried the fluid grace of someone accustomed to different gravitational conditions. "Ethereae," she continued, apparently reading his analytical expression. "We're what you might call distant cousins, evolutionary speaking. Same basic template, different environmental adaptations." "Ethereae," Samuel repeated, testing the word. "I've never heard of your species in any first contact databases." "That's because we prefer to choose when and how contact occurs." Lyra moved closer, her silver eyes reflecting his portable lighting in ways that created patterns like starlight. "We've been watching human expansion for several centuries, waiting for the right circumstances." Samuel's mind raced through the implications. "You've been observing humanity secretly?" "Not secretly, exactly. More, selectively. We don't announce our presence to every species we encounter. Most civilizations aren't ready for the kind of technological and cultural exchange that meaningful contact requires." Lyra gestured toward the chamber around them. "This facility was built as a way station, a place where we could safely make contact with species that showed appropriate development." "And I showed appropriate development?" "You've spent the past 3 days documenting this site with careful respect for its architectural integrity. You've avoided damaging anything, you've recorded detailed observations rather than simply collecting samples, and you've shown genuine appreciation for the engineering achievements rather than just focusing on potential commercial value." Lyra's silver eyes held something that might have been approval. That suggested someone worth talking to. Samuel looked around the chamber with new understanding. "You've been watching me since I arrived." "Since before you arrived. This facility has been monitoring surface activity for decades, waiting for someone who approached with the right intentions." Lyra touched what Samuel had thought was a decorative wall panel, and it activated with soft chimes, displaying information in symbols he couldn't read. We've observed many human expeditions over the years. Most were focused on resource extraction or territorial claim establishment. You're the first to approach as a scholar rather than an exploiter. So this was a test. More like an interview. We needed to determine whether your species was ready for contact, and whether you personally could serve as an appropriate liaison. Lyra's expression carried something that might have been amusement mixed with satisfaction. You passed. Samuel absorbed this information while studying the activated control panel. How long have you been waiting here? In this facility? About 200 years, local time. Though waiting isn't quite accurate, I've been maintaining the systems, monitoring human development, and preparing for eventual contact. Lyra moved to another panel, activating displays that showed orbital views of the planet and what appeared to be star charts. My people continue their migration across the galaxy, but they left me here to establish contact protocols when humanity reached appropriate development levels. 200 years alone. Not entirely alone. This facility has extensive databases, communication arrays, and entertainment systems. Plus, I've had the interesting challenge of learning about human culture through observation and analysis. Lyra's silver eyes held warmth that transformed her alien features into something approaching familiarity. I've become quite fond of your species' archaeological practices. The way you preserve and study the past shows wisdom that many civilizations lack. Samuel found himself relaxing despite the surreal nature of their conversation. Lyra's manner suggested someone accustomed to putting others at ease, with the kind of patient confidence that came from extensive experience with first contact situations. What happens now? He asked. Now we begin the real conversation. Lyra activated additional systems, and the chamber transformed around them. Hidden panels revealed advanced technology that made human equipment look primitive. Display screens showed information in languages Samuel was beginning to suspect his mind could somehow parse, and the lighting adjusted to create an environment that felt both alien and somehow welcoming. My people left extensive technological gifts that could benefit human development, but only if they're introduced responsibly. Medical advances that could eliminate most diseases, energy systems that could solve resource scarcity, and manufacturing techniques that could transform your industrial capabilities. Lyra's expression grew serious. But such gifts require recipients who understand their responsibilities. And you're the gatekeeper. I'm the evaluator. My role is to determine whether humanity is ready for these advances, and whether specific individuals can serve as responsible guardians of Ethereal knowledge. Lyra looked at him directly, her silver eyes holding depths that suggested centuries of experience. Samuel, what I'm offering could change the entire trajectory of human civilization. But it requires trust and cooperation between our species. Samuel stared at the technological wonders revealed around him, his archaeological mind automatically cataloging the implications of what he was seeing. This is the greatest discovery in human history. It's the beginning of a partnership that could benefit both our peoples, Lyra corrected. But only if we approach it with appropriate wisdom. She moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could see the faint patterns of light that seemed to move beneath her skin like living constellations. The question is whether you're prepared for the responsibility of serving as humanity's first Ethereal liaison. Samuel looked at the alien technology, at the woman who had waited 2 centuries for this conversation, and at the opportunity to bridge the gap between civilizations. I think, he said carefully, that's exactly what I've been preparing for my entire career, even if I didn't know it. Lyra smiled, and her expression transformed her from alien mystery into someone Samuel was beginning to suspect he could grow quite fond of. Then let's begin your real education, Dr. Hayes. You have a lot to learn about the universe you're about to help reshape. The next 3 days transformed Samuel's understanding of archaeology from the study of dead civilizations into something approaching collaboration with living ones. Lyra proved to be an exceptional teacher, combining vast knowledge with the patience of someone who'd had centuries to perfect her educational techniques. The key principle, she explained while demonstrating a device that could repair molecular damage in organic materials, is that technology should enhance rather than replace natural capabilities. Observe. She placed a withered plant specimen that Samuel had collected from the cave entrance into the device's treatment chamber. Energy fields too subtle for human perception began working on the cellular level, and within minutes the plant was restored to perfect health. Impressive, Samuel said, documenting the process with equipment that now seemed primitive compared to Ethereal technology. But I have to ask. With capabilities like this, why didn't your people simply announce themselves to humanity decades ago? Because premature contact usually leads to dependency rather than partnership, Lyra replied, carefully returning the restored plant to a containment system that would preserve it for further study. We've observed hundreds of species throughout our migration. Those who receive advanced technology before developing appropriate wisdom tend to become consumers rather than innovators. Samuel was beginning to understand the careful thought behind Ethereal contact protocols. You want partners, not clients. Exactly. Your species shows remarkable innovative capacity, but innovation requires the right balance of capability and responsibility. Lyra activated another demonstration, showing manufacturing techniques that could produce materials stronger than anything in human databases while using only basic elements. These technologies could solve most of humanity's resource challenges, but only if implemented by people who understand their implications. And that's where the evaluation process comes in. My role is to identify humans who possess the intellectual framework and ethical foundation necessary to serve as responsible technology guardians. Lyra's silver eyes held something that might have been approval mixed with personal interest. Though I must admit, you've exceeded my initial assessment parameters. Samuel felt heat rise in his cheeks at what sounded distinctly like a compliment. Over the past days, their professional collaboration had begun developing into something more personal. Lyra's centuries of isolation had created someone who valued genuine intellectual connection, while Samuel's academic lifestyle had left him unprepared for meaningful relationships with someone whose knowledge encompassed entire civilizations. Exceeded how? He asked, trying to maintain scientific objectivity despite growing awareness that his feelings toward Lyra were becoming distinctly unscientific. Your learning curve has been remarkable. Most individuals require extensive adjustment periods when exposed to paradigm-shifting concepts. You've adapted to Ethereal technological principles with an intuitive understanding that suggests natural compatibility. Lyra moved closer, ostensibly to demonstrate another device but staying within what Samuel was beginning to recognize as personal space rather than professional distance. It's almost as if your mind was designed for this kind of work. Samuel found himself studying the patterns of light that moved beneath Lyra's skin like living art. Is that a common trait among humans selected for contact? You're the first human I've made contact with, Lyra replied quietly. My assessment protocols were developed through observation and theoretical modeling, not practical experience. The admission carried implications that made Samuel reconsider their entire interaction. So this is as much a first contact experience for you as it is for me. More so, actually. I've had centuries to study human behavior patterns, but no direct experience with human emotional responses or the dynamics of interpersonal relationships. Lyra's expression showed vulnerability that her composed exterior had previously hidden. I was selected for this assignment partly because my empathic abilities allow me to assess other species' emotional development, but that same sensitivity makes personal connections complicated. Samuel understood that they were approaching territory that went far beyond technological exchange or diplomatic protocols. Complicated how? Ethereal emotional bonds tend to be deeper and more permanent than human relationships, based on what I've observed through your media and communication intercepts. When we form personal connections, they typically last for centuries rather than decades. Lyra's silver eyes held depths that reflected not just intelligence but genuine feeling. Which creates challenges when the object of those feelings belongs to a species with significantly shorter lifespans. Are you saying you're developing feelings for me? I'm saying that spending days in close collaboration with someone who shares my intellectual curiosity and ethical framework has created emotional responses that my assignment protocols didn't anticipate. Lyra touched another control panel, and the chamber's lighting shifted to something softer and more intimate. Samuel, what I'm offering you isn't just technological knowledge. It's partnership in reshaping the relationship between our civilizations. Samuel felt the weight of decisions that would affect not just his own life but potentially the entire future of human development. And that partnership would be whatever we choose to make it. Professional collaboration, personal relationship, or some combination that hasn't been defined yet. Lyra moved to stand directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the silver patterns in her eyes shift like liquid mercury. But I want you to understand the full scope of what you're considering. She activated a holographic display that showed star charts spanning galactic distances. My people's migration follows patterns that could take them thousands of light years from this system. If I choose to remain here as humanity's liaison, I'm choosing to separate from my civilization permanently. And if you don't remain, then this contact becomes a historical footnote rather than the beginning of ongoing cooperation between our species. Lyra's expression carried the weight of decisions that had implications beyond personal preference. The technological gifts I could provide would still benefit humanity, but without ongoing guidance, they might not be implemented with appropriate wisdom. Samuel studied the star charts, understanding that Lyra was offering to sacrifice reunion with her own people for the sake of fostering humanitarian cooperation. That's an enormous sacrifice to ask of someone. It would be, if it were purely sacrificial. But Samuel, these past days have shown me something I didn't expect to find. Lyra's voice carried warmth that transformed her alien features into something that seemed familiar and right. I've discovered that some partnerships are worth choosing over other obligations. Even partnerships with short-lived humans who probably don't understand half of what you're offering. Especially partnerships with curious humans who ask the right questions and treat ancient knowledge with appropriate respect. Lyra reached out to touch his hand, and Samuel felt a sensation like gentle electrical current flowing between them. Your lifespan may be shorter than mine, but the quality of connection we've developed suggests that time isn't the most important factor in meaningful relationships. Samuel looked at their joined hands, noting that Lyra's skin was warmer than human normal and seemed to pulse with subtle energy that synchronized with his own heartbeat. Are you asking me to help you choose between your people and mine? I'm asking whether you'd be interested in building something new that honors both our peoples while creating possibilities that neither of us could achieve alone. Lyra's silver eyes held hope mixed with uncertainty. Samuel, what we're discussing could be the foundation for a new kind of interspecies cooperation, but it requires commitment from both of us. Commitment to what, exactly? To each other, to responsible technology sharing, and to the possibility that love can develop between people from different worlds when they share compatible values and genuine intellectual connection. Lyra's honesty was as startling as any technological demonstration she'd provided. I'm offering you partnership in the fullest sense, professional collaboration, personal relationship, and the chance to help reshape how civilizations interact. Samuel felt his worldview realigning around possibilities he'd never imagined. And in exchange, I get to spend whatever time we have together working with someone who understands why preserving the past and building the future are equally important. Lyra's expression combined alien beauty with entirely recognizable affection. Plus, I finally get to find out whether all those human cultural artifacts I've been studying accurately represent what personal relationships actually feel like. Samuel looked around the chamber filled with technology that could transform human civilization, at the woman who'd waited 2 centuries for this conversation, and at the opportunity to participate in something unprecedented in human history. Lyra, he said carefully, I think I'd like to find out what that feels like too. Her smile transformed the entire chamber into something that felt less like an alien facility and more like home. The decision to contact Samuel's research team required careful planning that balanced scientific protocol with the unprecedented nature of first contact. Lyra spent hours explaining the psychological profile she'd developed for each team member, identifying who would adapt best to paradigm-shifting revelations and who might require more gradual introduction to Ethereal concepts. Dr. Martinez will handle the technological aspects well, Lyra said, reviewing personnel files on holographic displays that now felt comfortably familiar to Samuel. Her background in theoretical physics provides the framework for understanding principles that seem impossible under current human scientific models. And Dr. Chen? More challenging. His focus on practical applications might make him push for immediate implementation rather than careful integration. Lyra's analysis was thorough and remarkably accurate considering she'd never met Samuel's colleagues directly. But his ethical framework suggests he'll support responsible development once he understands the implications. Samuel was continuously amazed by the depth of Lyra's knowledge about human behavior and psychology. How did you learn so much about people you've never actually met? 2 centuries of observation creates comprehensive data sets, Lyra replied with a smile that had become increasingly frequent over the past week. Plus, empathic abilities provide insights that pure observation can't achieve. I can sense emotional patterns and motivational structures even through remote monitoring. That sounds like an enormous advantage for understanding other species. It also creates challenges, Lyra admitted, her expression showing the complexity of abilities that were both gift and burden. Empathic sensitivity means I experience others' emotions as if they were my own. It's useful for assessment purposes, but it makes personal relationships intense. Samuel understood that she was explaining why their developing connection felt so profound despite the relatively short time they'd known each other. Is that why you volunteered for this assignment? To avoid the intensity of relationships with your own people? Partly. Lyra activated another display, showing images of Ethereal society that looked like crystalline cities floating in space among beings of living light. Ethereal emotional bonds are permanent and all-consuming. When we connect with someone, it's for life, which can span millennia. The intensity becomes overwhelming for individuals with strong empathic abilities. So you chose isolation over overwhelming connection. I chose the possibility of finding a different kind of connection, one that might be intense but not overwhelming. Lyra moved to stand beside him, her presence creating the warm electrical sensation that had become pleasantly familiar. Humans process emotions differently than Ethereal. Your feelings are strong but manageable, passionate but not consuming. For someone with my abilities, that creates the possibility of connection without losing myself in the other person's emotional patterns. Samuel realized that Lyra's attraction to him wasn't just personal but represented a solution to challenges she'd faced throughout her entire existence. And now I've discovered that the right kind of emotional connection enhances rather than overwhelms empathic abilities. Lyra's silver eyes reflected contentment that transformed her alien features into something that seemed perfectly natural. Samuel, being with you has taught me that love doesn't have to be consumption. It can be collaboration. The admission made Samuel understand that their relationship represented more than just personal affection, it was proof of concept for sustainable emotional bonds between their species. So we're not just building a personal relationship, we're creating a model for human Ethereal interaction. Every aspect of our contact will be studied and analyzed by both our peoples. The success or failure of our relationship will influence how future contacts are conducted. Lyra's honesty about the stakes involved was both thrilling and terrifying. No pressure, of course. Samuel laughed, finding humor in the situation despite its enormous implications. Just the future of interspecies relations depending on whether we can make this work. I have confidence in our compatibility, Lyra said with the kind of certainty that suggested empirical evidence rather than hope. Though I should mention that there's one more factor you need to understand before we proceed with contacting your team. Which is? Lyra activated a communication console that Samuel had assumed was for local facility management. Instead, it displayed a star chart showing the current position of the Ethereal fleet, thousands of light-years away and moving steadily farther from human space. My people don't know I've made contact with you yet. According to my original mission parameters, I was supposed to observe until humanity achieved specific technological and social development benchmarks, then report my findings for evaluation by the Etherii Council. Lyra's expression showed the weight of decisions that went far beyond personal preference. Contacting you directly represents initiative that exceeds my authority. Are you going to get in trouble for this? That depends on the outcomes. If our contact proves beneficial for both species, it will be viewed as appropriate adaptation to changing circumstances. If it creates problems. Lyra gestured at the communication console with what might have been resignation. The Etherii value results over protocol compliance, but they also expect their representatives to show appropriate judgment. Samuel understood that Lyra had risked her standing with her own people to make contact with him. So when you contact the fleet to report, I'll be recommending immediate establishment of formal diplomatic relations, technological exchange programs, and ongoing cooperation agreements. Lyra's voice carried determination that suggested she'd already made her choice. I'll also be requesting permission to remain as permanent liaison, which will require explaining the personal factors that influence my assessment. You're going to tell them about us. You're going to tell them about us. I'm going to tell them that successful long-term cooperation between our species requires representatives who understand both cultures intimately, and that such understanding can best be achieved through personal relationships that transcend purely professional collaboration. Lyra's silver eyes held both affection and determination. It's the truth, and it's also the strongest argument for why our contact protocols should be modified to allow for deeper cultural integration. Samuel felt the weight of being part of something that would reshape how civilizations interacted. And if they disagree? Then I'll have to choose between returning to my people and staying to continue the work we've started here. Lyra moved to stand directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the patterns of light beneath her skin shifting in response to her emotions. Samuel, I want you to understand what I'm choosing. My people live for millennia. Choosing to remain with humanity means choosing you over centuries of potential experiences with my own civilization. That's an enormous sacrifice. It would be, if I viewed it as sacrifice rather than opportunity. Lyra reached out to touch his face, her fingers warm against his skin. These past weeks have shown me something I never expected to find, a partnership that makes me want to experience whatever time we have together rather than worry about what I might be missing elsewhere. Samuel understood that they were approaching the moment when their relationship would either become something permanent or end before it could fully develop. What do you need from me? I need to know that you're prepared for the implications of what we're building together. This isn't just about personal affection, it's about becoming the bridge between our civilizations. Lyra's voice carried the weight of enormous decisions. Samuel, if you choose to be my partner in this, you'll become humanity's primary liaison with Etherii technology and culture. Your decisions will affect the entire future of human development. And if I'm not ready for that responsibility? Then I'll provide your people with the basic technological gifts they're ready for, contact my fleet to report successful first contact, and arrange for more formal diplomatic representatives to handle ongoing relations. Lyra's honesty was both reassuring and heartbreaking. You'll have contributed to one of the most important moments in human history, but our personal relationship would end before it becomes too complicated for either of us. Samuel looked around the chamber that had become familiar territory, at the technology that could reshape human civilization, and at the woman who'd waited 2 centuries for this conversation. The choice she was offering represented everything he'd devoted his career to understanding. The intersection of knowledge, responsibility, and the courage to embrace possibilities beyond current understanding. Lyra, he said carefully, I've spent my entire career studying how civilizations develop and interact. What you're offering is the chance to participate in that process rather than just observe it. And personally? Samuel took her hands, feeling the subtle energy that flowed between them like a current that connected not just 2 people but 2 species' potential futures. Personally, I've discovered that the most important archaeological discoveries aren't always ancient. Sometimes they're about finding someone who shares your curiosity about the universe and wants to explore it together. Lyra's smile transformed her alien features into something that seemed perfectly natural and right. Then we're in agreement. I'll contact my people to request permission for permanent liaison status, and you'll contact your team to begin the process of introducing Ethereal technology to human researchers. Together. Everything together, from now on. Lyra activated the communication console with confident movements that suggested someone who'd made peace with enormous decisions. Samuel, are you ready to help reshape the relationship between our civilizations? He looked at the communication array that would connect him to his research team, knowing that the next conversation would change everything about humanity's understanding of their place in the universe. I've been ready my entire career. I just didn't know I was waiting for the right partner to help me do it. Lyra's laughter filled the chamber with warmth that made alien technology feel like home. In that case, Dr. Hayes, let's begin changing the galaxy. As Samuel activated his own communication equipment to contact the Surface Research Station, he reflected on the strange path that had led him from studying dead civilizations to helping birth a living partnership between worlds. The voice in the cave that had said, "Don't be scared, I've been waiting," had been offering more than comfort, it had been offering the future. 6 months later, the Whispering Caverns had become the first official embassy between human and Ethereal civilizations, with Dr. Samuel Hayes serving as humanity's chief liaison and Lyra as the permanent Ethereal representative. Their partnership had become the model for interspecies cooperation, proving that the most profound connections could develop between people from different worlds when they shared curiosity, respect, and the courage to build something unprecedented together. The cave that had once held only silence now echoed with the sounds of two civilizations learning to communicate, while at its heart, a human archaeologist and an Ethereal empath continued the conversation that had begun with a voice in the darkness saying, "I've been waiting." They were still waiting, together, for whatever wonders the universe would reveal next.